Hi, I'm Angela Ruth Strong, and I'm talking about the power of story. This is something I'm very passionate about as a writer, obviously, but I think that so often stories are divided into character-driven, plot-driven, and message-driven that they miss out on the opportunity to combine all three and make the story even more powerful. So we're going to be going through the basics of that today and then talking about how combining that in there. I'm going to start with a quote from Brandon Sanderson, who said, "The purpose of a storyteller is not to tell you how to think, but to give you questions to think upon." Those are the stories that stick with you long after you finish reading the book or watching the movie. And that's, as a Christian, that's what we want people to do, is to ask questions that draw them to the answer that they're looking for. The Bible says in Mark 4:34, "He was never without a story when he spoke." A parable is an earthly story with a heavenly meaning. I'm including notes, so you don't have to take notes on the stuff I say. That will be included in the lesson as well. So we're talking about plot, character, and message-driven stories and how to combine them. Let's start with plot-driven. Plot is a sequence of events that's connected by cause and effect. So I've written a love-inspired suspense novel. This is plot-driven to the point that I tried to have my character eat a lot of food whenever she got stressed, shovel food in her mouth, because that's something I would do. But that was too character driven. That slowed the story down when they wanted it to be about plot, about this happens, then this happens, then this happens, then this happens. Who cares if she shoves food in her face? That just slows down the events of what's taking place. So that would be a plot driven story. When you focus on plots, you focus on the events. They're often exciting and fast paced. So a lot of the big summer blockbusters are going to be plot driven, about earthquakes or volcanoes or aliens. Those are very plot driven. So you have to meticulously tie the plot points together to create a cohesive story. You naturally focus on ideas instead of people and their motivations. So then we go into character driven, and my very first critique partner was Christina Berry. We met at a conference in 2006. She won a Carol Award for this and was nominated for a Christie. If you haven't checked it out, I think she'll be re-releasing it soon. The Familiar Stranger is about a woman and a man who he has amnesia, and they get a chance to fall in love all over again, though there is a twist. So, but it's not about the twist. It's about the characters and their relationships and what they're struggling with. So that would be a character-driven. The individual is used to tell the story, and to be successful, your character should be memorable, dimensional, and distinct from each other. They must have a sense of agency. In other words, your character should own and control their actions within the world that you create. A character-driven story is focused on studying the characters that make up your story. Character-driven stories deal with inner transformation or the relationships between characters. So when I wrote my first novel that Christina critiqued when we were first becoming critique partners, I had interest in it from a publisher, and they said the characters need to go a little bit deeper. These would be fine for a plot-driven novel, but this is character-driven, so we need a little more from them. I've got a hair sticking out. So that's plot-driven, character-driven, and then there's message-driven, which is huge in the Christian market. Those are the stories like The Shack, where, yes, the plot and the characters are important, but it's the message. Movies like God's Not Dead, where it's the message that's more important than the reality of the story. So Christian readers anticipate and look for specific messages far more than general market readers anticipate and look for specific messages, which could be a downfall for Christian fiction because we are less critical of the stories that give the message that we want to hear. So it might not be the best story, but we like it because it makes us feel like we are right. So that's not doing what Brandon Sanderson said about getting people to think. That's just reaffirming our values that we already have rather than challenging us. So I'm passionate about Christian fiction that is not preachy. And I think the way to do that, and what Robert McKee says in his book Story, which is more about screenplays than novels, but he says you have to make it look like the opposing argument's going to win. You have to make it look like your message is going to fail and not come across, because you have to overcome the greatest argument against it. Because life is hard, life is messy. And if we just, give the adulterer AIDS, or if we just have the atheist get hit by a car and die, we're not overcoming those messages. We are being preachy. So whatever your message is, if your message is about abortion, then you have to have the husband in a place where he could lose his wife if he doesn't terminate the pregnancy. He has to choose. That's hard. There are no easy answers to that. So if that's your message, you have to overcome the hardest argument against it. I'm currently writing the real life story of a woman from our church who was raped at the age of 15 and became pregnant. And she ended up keeping the baby. And I know him. He's about my age now. So that's the kind of story that's going to be powerful, because it does overcome the biggest argument against what you're trying to bring across. So another example would be, my mom made me watch the Winnie the Pooh safety rules program when I was little, and I was mortified. But she wanted me to get the message to look both ways before I cross the street and to not ride with strangers. So that's why that little Winnie the Pooh show was made, not because it was a great story. So those do play a purpose, but those aren't going to be the most powerful stories we can tell. So in talking about Robert McKee and screenplay writing, I'm just going to show you how screenplay writers do it. And I don't think it's Robert who said this. This is from Save the Cat. But they divide the story into 3 acts, and then there's a midpoint as well. So the first act leads up to the decision the character makes that's going to send them on this journey. And here's the journey. Blaine Snyder calls it fun and games, which you can have a lot of fun with it. Like if you're writing a football story, think of every possible thing that could happen at football practice or at a football game, and then pick the best ones to stick in there. Have fun with it. This midpoint right here is where it looks like everything's going well. For my story that I'm writing about Dee Dee, who had the baby at the age of 15 and got into drugs because she was in so much emotional pain. And then she ended up getting into a gypsy biker gang, which I didn't even know those existed. She ended up in and out of prison, finally got herself clean, married, had a dream job, bought a house. That's the midpoint. So it looks like they're on the right path, like everything's going well. But then it's not, and probably the things that they've done leading up to this point are going to lead them to the final act where everything goes wrong right there, and then this is where you're going to tie it up. So a screenplay writer would have 9 scenes, 9 scenes, 9 scenes, 9 scenes. So you can kind of look at your pacing that way, look at your plot points, and see how that works. As a writer, you got a little more room to play with because you don't have to fit everything into 90 minutes. You can really dig a little deeper, stretch out your scenes a little bit more, add more, because you can't fit a whole novel into 90-minute screenplay. So this is what it looks like when you write a book. Here is the inciting incident, what happens that sends them on the journey. And the way I like to describe it is that we all want to take the easiest steps to fulfill our dreams. So if it was up to us, this is where we want to go, right here. And we would just take the straight, easy route right here. Your job as an author is to put something in their way. And their goal and their motivation has to be so great that they're going to rise above whatever it is you put in their way. And it's going to look like they succeeded, but you're going to put, as an author, you're going to make it worse. And that this comes from Donald Moss in his book, writing the breakout novel. The workbook was one of my favorites. But when things get bad, you're going to make them worse. And then when they get even worse, you're going to make them even worse. And that's basically what we're doing right here, is we're making it worse and worse and worse and worse. Usually, whatever it is they did to overcome right here, that is going to have caused another problem, a greater problem. As a Christian, in my own personal life, because I believe this does fit our own personal lives, Right here, I'm like, thank you, God, you answered my prayer. And then it gets worse. And I'm like, what the heck, God? I thought you answered my prayer down here. But he is the author of life, and he knows this little secret that we need to learn to be good authors. The darker this black moment, the more hopeless this moment looks in our lives, in our characters' lives, the more powerful it's going to be when we overcome. So this is how your story is going to look. Now, the way we combine the character in, so it's not just about the plot points, is we make them the only person who could get into this trouble and the only person who could get out of this. These moments are connected. If you think about the movie Elf, he gets into trouble because he is a human who's living like an elf. He gets out of trouble and rescues Santa because he was raised with elves. So it's like opposite sides of the coin. Only the character that you put into this plot points can overcome the story. And I believe that's true about our own lives as well. Whatever strength you've been given, there's a flip side that can also be a weakness. That's probably going to get you in trouble in your life. And so you might be tempted not to go there anymore, but you need that. You need that strength God has given you that you used in probably an immature way here to grow it and overcome. For example, Joseph in the Bible, his dreams, that's a gift from God. He had dreams. That's what got him thrown in the pit, because he had a dream that his brothers were worshiping him. So, Potiphar's wife, prison. He is standing before Pharaoh here, and he must interpret a dream or he will die. This is it. This is the do or die moment. If he did not use the dreams God had given him, the gift God had given him, this would have been hopeless. He wouldn't have survived. He wouldn't have been able to interpret that dream. So only Joseph could go through this journey. Same thing with Moses. Kind of like the elf. He was a Jew living with the Egyptians, which got him there and got him out of there as well. Marty McFly in Back to the Future. He could skateboard. His skateboarding got him in trouble. His skateboarding helped him escape. With Doc, Doc's brilliance got him in trouble. Doc's brilliance helped him escape. So that's how you can tie that character in to your story and make it just very authentic and personal. This, like I talked about, your message, having to overcome the most strongest message against it, this most strongest argument against it, that's where this is. This is going to be your message in your story. If your story is the one about abortion and the woman has a horrible pregnancy and gets worse and worse and worse to the point that if she doesn't terminate it, she could die, and maybe she's in a coma, her husband has to decide. That's your message right there. It's overcoming everything. And you're going to have to give that husband something he knows, some gift he has, that's going to help him overcome that. And those are the most powerful stories. So I love this. And not just because of the challenges, but because it connects, I believe it connects all those different things together. So characters naturally want to take the path of least resistance. I already explained that. So one way you could flesh it out a little bit more so you could see where they're headed. My character wants blank, but blank, therefore blank. My character wants goal, but obstacle, therefore conflict. So I think, let's see, I made it through all that. I'm looking at my notes here. So I just really want to give the impression that this isn't just about your stories. This is about your life too. This is about your writing journal. This is about you overcoming rejections. This is about you getting maybe bad reviews on a book. This is about, you talk to any author out there and crazy things have happened. My friend Christina won awards for this novel, wasn't able to sell another one. But that didn't stop her. She became the publisher for Ashbury Lane, which was then bought out by Whitefire Publishing. That was her journey. That was huge. That was amazing. But she did have obstacles, just like we all have obstacles, and just like you'll have obstacles in your writing. So one other thing that always sticks with me, that I believe is true about our lives, And it comes from the book, How to Write a Damn Good Suspense Novel. You will see in your notes I have a little @ sign for the A, so I'm not really saying a bad word, even though you just heard me. But the hero and the villain are both wounded. We're all wounded. None of us get out of this world without pain and sorrow. We're all hurt. The villain hides their wounds with evil, and the hero finds healing through self-sacrifice. Now, what I mean by self-sacrifice isn't, just lay down and give up the battle and let the enemy win. It means that you give your gifts and your goals over to God. You choose the dream giver over your dream. And that's going to look different in every situation. If you think about Lightning McQueen, Pixar, he gives up winning the race to go back and help a friend because that's how he'd grown through the story. So he did become a hero through that. At the beginning, not so much, because he was choosing to hide his wounds with evil. In the end, he became a hero. And that's true for all of us. And I think that's what makes the characters the most real as well. Luke Skywalker, he could have chosen to hide his wounds with evil. He could have, when his hand was cut off, he could have reached out for his father and turned to the dark side. But he sacrificed himself. He let go and fell. He didn't know that he was going to be coming back to die in episode 8. But he did sacrifice himself there, which is what made him a hero. And when Anakin rescued Luke in episode 6, he had the power to become a hero as well. So I love that. And I think that makes all our characters more real. And it's true for us every single day. If we get a bad review, we could hide that with evil. We could mask our pain by drinking. We could attack and return online. There's so many things that we could do that are not out of love and not out of that self-sacrifice that's going to help us overcome and be the hero. So in the end, I like to consider the last line the bow on the top of the present that I give to my readers. So a lot of times I don't even finish. Like I get to the end, I'm over the climax, everything's wrapping up, and then I stop because I don't want to just write a last line and not give it any more thought. So I stop before I get to the very end. I send it out to my critique partners. I usually let them know this is not quite done. And then in the meantime, it just percolates and I'm able to tie that ribbon. Because I think the last lines are very important. I don't know if as a reader, when you read a book, do you feel a little let down if that last line's just like, and they lived happily ever after? That's been done. That's not going to make the reader think. So I want something really to pack that punch at the end. But I was going to tell you, so my last book that I sent out to my critique partners, I failed to mention to one of them that that I hadn't finished. I'd left it. And she was very concerned for me. She's like, Angela, I don't feel like this is done. I think you might need to go back and add at least a couple more lines. And so she's kind of concerned. And I went back to see what I'd left her with, how I'd left it. And it had been this reconnection with mother and daughter. And the mother's apologizing. And then the last line was, my character shrugs. I didn't even realize that's what I left her with, or that she thought I was done with the book. So don't leave your stories like that. Really tie it up. This brings me to my favorite writing rule that I made up. So that's why it's my favorite. I call it the nose plays. The nose plays. And it comes from Ocean's 12 or 13. It's the one where Matt Damon has the big fake nose. And at first they just need to disguise him. So they give him a nose as part of the disguise. And then when everything goes wrong and they have to find a new plan, the plan revolves around his nose. And they all start saying, the nose plays, the nose plays. So whenever you get lost or stuck at the end, look back to what you've already created, what you've already written, the gifts you've already given your characters, because they have what it takes to overcome. You just have to look into it and see it and find it and know that the nose plays. Don't just make up some random ending. Use what you've already written to bring it all together. So the end of this talk is by Artie Cummings. He says, a good book has no ending. And that's what I want for you. That was how I felt when I went and watched the movie Where'd You Go, Bernadette, this weekend. It's been resonating in me. Like, I've been thinking and mulling it over and considering how it affects me, how I relate. That's what you want your readers to do, is to relate to your characters and be like, oh, that's that one time when I felt this way. And then that story has power to live on past your pages. So that's what I want for your writing, the power of story. I'm also including in the notes, I believe, there will be a list of seven reasons God wants us to tell stories. And so I have 7 scriptures listed in there. And real quick, I'm looking to see if I have pulled out any books to show you. I'll just show you one real quick while I have you here. This is part of my story. This was my debut novel, Love Finds You in Sun Valley, Idaho. I shouldn't have sold it on proposal alone. I'd written a couple books that had been rejected. My agent was shopping them, actually. And this one was a new line at the time. And it was Love Finds You in, and you just pick some cute town and you write your story set in that town. And all you had to do is write 3 chapters. So I did, sent it into my agent, forgot about it. I mean, I'd never sold a book before. It wasn't likely I was going to sell my first one just based on 3 chapters. And when she called me with good news, it was about this book. The crazy thing is, part of my own journey is that right after I sold this book, my husband at the time left me, and I had to finish writing a romance novel as my marriage fell apart. I quit writing romance. I split ways with my agent because she wanted to pursue romance, and I was like, no, can't do it. This line of books, Summerside, shut down. This book was dead. And then God breathed new life, like he does. He breathed new life into a new marriage for me, where I learned what love really is. And there's nothing else I'd rather write about, because love changes lives. And without me doing anything, this book got optioned for film. They didn't end up making it, but that was just an amazing gift. And it was an opportunity to pursue bringing this book back. I now have 5 books in the series. You can buy them all for 99 cents now. Currently, they're combined, and another one has been optioned for film. I think I'm going to be going down to the American film market in November to meet with the producer to talk about possibilities for that happening. So God does give you gifts. Sometimes they feel like a curse. My first husband said he left me because I liked writing more than him, which is not true. But it left a wound in my heart that I don't want to hurt my husband now by writing. So I still struggle with some guilt for that. But that's in the end how it has helped me overcome, because I'm now writing a nonfiction book I just sold, Moving On After Your Husband Moves Out. And it's created this whole ministry. So I didn't mean to share all that with you, but I just want to share that your life is a huge story. God is the author of your life, and there is power in that, as well as in the books you're going to write. So thank you.